Up is a calendar from Fred Green. Fred Green was up at the shop last summer. He had the profile stiletto, and as a little token of appreciation, he sent me this calendar that's full of Reno air racers, and I'm sitting here drooling over it. Just what I need. I can't make up my mind which Spitfire model I want to make a model of, and he's got to add insult to injury by getting me excited about P-51s. Anyway, I'm going to run through the pages of this, add it to our little inventory of ideas. And if there ever was a source for ideas for paint jobs, boy. And this is one of the sources I always use. Now we're going to be coming up on painting this profile Cardinal real soon. And I'm trying to come up with obviously something as slick as possible. But Reno air racers, always a good source for something exotic. What's funny now, people that don't know it's a Sea Fury. Look how big this plane is. You have no idea how big this plane is till you see the pilot, where as opposed to a Spitfire that's a relatively small plane, the pilot just about fits in it. Look at the size of the pilot relative to this plane. By the way, this got third at the 97 race, Dreadnought. I think even Cox used this paint job on one of their plastic models. I know this has been done in scale RC many times. Another really nice paint job. And this is one I really do like. Tipsy Miss is a real nice one. Aerocobra. This is where I got the original idea for the idea for the sweeper canopy. If you look, you'll notice it's a P39 canopy and scoop. Again, these are the kind of things you can implement in through the exhausts. You can implement, since this is a center mount engine, you can implement some of this even to an ordinary stunt ship. Good source of ideas. And of course, no Reno air race collection is ever complete without the bear, the rare bear. By the way, on that 97 Reno thing that I taped off of ESPN, I was looking at the propeller. Look at the propeller on this thing. It was a 3-blade. It looked like a custom made or something from Star Wars or something, all chrome and polished. Notice the canopy now. There's another good source of an idea you possibly might want to use for a canopy. Look how nice and low that canopy is. Pilot's head, of course, just about touching. I know Billy Werwich has used a lot of these kind of, they usually come off of little race cars to decorate his model. Again, the lettering, a lot of good ideas. Now, of course, it's a Sea Fury, so the word furious. Again, if you don't have an idea how large these planes really are, Sea Fury is a very large airplane relative to P-51s and Spitfires and the like. Just look at the cockpit treatment on this, on color tile. Again, nice lettering job. You can see how nice and shiny that is. Stiletto, of course, which wound up becoming Strega later on in life. Notice there's no belly scoop for the P-51. Strega doesn't have a belly scoop. And they've somehow mounted the radiators in the wing or somewhere, who knows, under the pilot seat. I don't really know. But this is an old picture. Look right underneath. Boy, this is some nice calendar. This, combined with the Lionel Train calendar that I have, I'm in. I'm in for 98. I'll never forget a date. And of course, what collection of Reno Air Race memorabilia would be complete without Tsunami? The original paint job, before it was painted red, The lettering, look at. I guess this is a real early photo. They hadn't converted the rudder over yet. Plane is roughly 1/3 smaller than a Mustang, and yet has the same exact motor. Nice lettering right there if you were looking for some real fancy lettering for a paint job. And of course the valve cover blisters. This is one of the planes, I might be wrong, but I think this one has already crashed. This is one that's not with us anymore, but still a great picture. Modified clipped wing Corsair with a modified canopy and turtle deck. Sponsored, of course, by Budweiser. I wish we could get Budweiser to sponsor me. Another look at the pipes coming out around the cowling on the Sea Fury. No wonder Al Rabe had such good luck with his. A very, very pretty airplane. Curved wing like a Spitfire. This is a nice paint job. This is really nice. Nice colors too. This is kind of like Walt Prey Midgley colors. These wild purples and maroons. Again, I really have to thank Fred Green Jr. Appreciate it a whole lot. And of course, this is the camo Sea Fury. Look at the spinner. Spinner is one of the things I really like on this. And we will definitely be using the calendar to mark our major events of 1998 here. Thanks a lot, Fred. Just want to mention one more time, you know, we have been using, and I really like to use something for quite a while before I go and commit to saying I really like it. I really am comfortable with this soft knife, the XL soft knife. We have quite a bit of the other blades and things around here. I'm looking forward to using more and more of these. But my suggestion is if you don't have a catalog, get a catalog. You can get almost all of this stuff from John Brodak direct. The big Zonosaur is a real good thing. We've already got one of them in stock. But again, just all kinds of good things. And while we're talking about catalogs, I know John Brodak's working on a new catalog. Maybe this is a good time to order one up for you from him direct. Always have the latest catalogs. Don't use last year's catalogs. Alright, back down the shop. Fun and games time. Now we got this dry in a couple of days. I put some putty in here. I want to make up some little sanding blocks to take care of that. Work on my fillets. Now see, you can see I put a little ding in there. Right there I can start working on little dings. There really isn't enough time left in the day to start the wing, which is one thing I want to have a whole day and do the wing in one shot. In fact, I don't know, next week's going to be shot anyway. Kenny's sanding here, and this is always the test. Boy, if I say this another time, when it's coming off like, it even smells nice. And we're hoping we can get some of this sanded out. Obviously we don't want to rush it. Coming out too nice to rush it, but
this is coming off beautifully.
Yeah, piece of cake. Now what I would do is I would sand everything right up, but don't go out on a silk span. I mean, go right up to the edge, walk down the cap strip, but don't sand that. So when we mask it up, this is absolutely ready to spray a coat of silver filler. And we're going to try, well, you're not going to get it done today, but within the next couple of days, get some silver filler on here. And I'm going to start sanding this out. Now, first thing I got to do, good that we're both sanding, want to make up some little sanding blocks in here. Now this is one of the nice things, these little polywogs, for getting an initial cut on this. In this case I see it's a little on the small side, so all I need to do is just wrap another piece of sandpaper on it, wrap another piece until I get the exact radius that I want to knock down the original material. Now it's really difficult to get a transition where it just flows and there's no little nick where it's coming up or going down. But again, because this is a special plane, I really want to have it right. And you know what, even if it wasn't a special plane, I'd use it to practice my techniques on. The only reason for not wanting to do a good job, if you knew you were going to crash, or there was a good chance you were going to crash this plane in a very short time, and you wanted to be able to build 2 or 3 of them as learning tools. That would be the only reason I could think of that would justify it. Anyway, we're both going to spend the whole day. It's really a crappy day out there, just sanding away and seeing how much we can get done. I'd like to get this sanded out. I'd like this to blend right in and be very smooth when I'm all done here. By the way, these little rubber polywogs are just a great little tool to have. Right about this point in time is when you really want to have them. You can see, but there's a little low spot right here because you're joining an airfoil and a flat. So when I have one side sanded to at least that I'm happy with it, this little thing I can fill in with a little bit of the putty, and while that's drying I can go and work on the other side. So always planning out your work so something's drying. It usually takes a half an hour to dry. It's a big help if you can do that, rather than sand the whole thing and then put the putty on as you go. In fact, I did that spot by the tail wheel where there was a little bit of a bubble. But again, just picking away at it now, I want to be starting to get real fussy about how this ultimately is going to look. And Kenny's basically doing the same thing here, working on an oval little by little by little, picking away at all the little imperfections. And it really, on a day like today, this is the only game in town. Not like this. I like to fill in with a couple of layers of this material. I don't like to just blow on one big layer of it. And I think you find out it'll just be a nicer product in the end if you put one little area on. Give that at least a half an hour. In fact, while I'm doing that, I can get this little spot back here. And this is the whole deal from this point on. It's an ongoing thing, constantly looking for little things that you can straighten out. Well, one great little tip every time you sand, and I'm sure we've put this on other tapes, but pull the tape up and move it up just a 1/64 of an inch so you don't get that edge. It kind of blends that edge in just a little bit. How many times have you taken the tape on and off there already? Plenty, huh?
No, only a couple of times.
Okay, well you've got, see, these little things will fill in, these little dings will fill in, but you don't want to build up a real edge there.
Yeah.
So I would, the next time I put the tape on, move it up just a little bit more and then break this edge. Get in there with the machinist ruler with, or fold up some sandpaper till it's in a corner.
Yeah.
Because up here you have a bit of an edge, and right here you could put a little Bondo or something.
Too.
Yeah. Other than that, it fills right in pretty good. Well, I think this is ready for the next coat of silver here. I kind of like the way that fared in. The only problem is it's really cold out there now, isn't it? Oh.
Yeah, it's freezing.
Oh, jeez. I guess you can tell it's freezing cold out here. Man. Anyway. All the little areas that you do once and twice, it seems like such a pain in the neck when you do them, but when you get that final coat of silver on and they look all nice and clean, oh. And I'm sure each time, this is going to need a couple of touch-ups because I went through into the wood a few places, but being it's so cold out here, I just hope this is going to dry. Repaired area down there. Oh! Makes you want to live in California. Now it looks like we got a real storm brewing here. Geez, just what I need. Anyway, I'll leave this guy out here to dry. it looks like a big storm outside. Oh, you're getting some progress made there.
Rougher sandpaper.
Yeah, that's the whole key. If you're getting that chewing gum, you can always go to a little bit rougher sandpaper too. You don't have to go out over the tissue, just right up to the edge here, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
You're going to basically take that home over the weekend, work on it, and
yeah,
I guess bring it back Monday, that's all.
Yeah, 5 or 6 hours this weekend on it.
Try to get a couple hours. Any minute, I would get him into the van. Yeah, we're coming up on a really mess. I got to get the compressor thing. Coming up on the worst part of the year here. Every day is an adventure with the weather. Now this is about the 5th or 6th day of Ernie's treatment, and you can see he's on the bottom of the tank. He isn't floating anymore. Again, special thanks to John Pothier and Dave Midgley, both who've been real helpful in ironing out my fish problems. And it's such a rainy, crappy day out there, we're going to go try to build some of the wing today. Now, no matter what wing you're building, or no matter what project, before I start anything, I like to do 2 things. I like to scrape the table. Got my old trusty scraper. And it seems like, I guess maybe in an average shop you don't have this, but we sure do. There's always little bits of CA and glue and dope and who knows what, breadcrumbs, pizza crumbs. We typically have been building these wings in one day, usually around 4 hours, when you have 2 people and when you videotape and everything. So I'm thinking maybe it'll take 5 hours if I'm by myself. Maybe it'll take 3, I don't know. Anyway, I like to get the table clean and check that I haven't lost my level. Every once in a while this table, because of humidity in the cellar, it'll tend to get a little out of whack, and I shim it with IBM cards and paint stirrers and everything. A lot of times you'll be building on a table like this and you notice you're trying to get your alignment, but you're sitting on top of a little mountain of glue or epoxy or something. So I really do spend a little time getting this squared away. It seems like an important step since we're making a prototype wing, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of an experiment by making this wing. We've already made Robert's, and we know his is in the bank. That's about as idiot-proof as you can make a wing, but I want to try something a little bit different on this wing. So I'm still in the back of my mind trying to organize out exactly what I want to do. Now it looks like we're still in pretty good level. I have this nice little drawing that I made up, but the most important thing here for me to remember is, well, a person that's building this off a kit would be building off a set of plans, so obviously this would be something you'd want to have to build off, and I'm sure when John makes the plans they'll be the equivalent of this piece of paper done on a real drawing mylar. In fact, this one looks like it's holding up pretty well. Usually by the time you're finished with this, and I remember when I did that first lost foam wing, when I was done with the lost foam I had to throw it away. It had so much glue and epoxy and dirt and everything on it, but this looks like it's going to be fine. I also made these little cutouts here. Since we're not working, there won't be a rib there. This will just help hold it to the table. And again, I can use this piece over and over and over and over. In fact, when I send John out the official plans for the kit, officials are not really the right word, but final plans, he'll have this exact piece to work with, and he can return it to me then. If he's going to build a test wing and we're going to build a test kit, obviously as soon as the kits are available, we'll want to build a real plane right from a kit. But I did. The thing that I want to try, again, I don't know if this is going to be a practical thing. We built Robert's wing with all 3/32 wood. And when it was done, it was so rigid and so strong, I was real happy with it. But I really wanted to try and give it a try anyway. See what would happen if we built the same wing with 16th. Now, if I build my wing with 16th and it doesn't come out as well as I'd like, I can just give the wing away. In fact, I know several other people interested in building one of these planes that would like a free wing. But what I did, I ordered up some 48-inch wood. I took wood that I was going to use for the leading and trailing edge. I had some decent wood, but nothing I really couldn't live without. I ordered some 48-inch wood from SIG. Now what came in, and this may be not typical of what they have, a lot of the wood is really not usable. You certainly wouldn't want to make the trailing edge of your wing out of these pieces, so you can eliminate them right away. And again, I'm not looking for the super lightest piece here. I'm looking for a super straight piece. We can get rid of this one right away. Get rid of these two right away, in fact. And this is something you want to do unless you're building from a kit, in which case if you did have a piece of wood that, now see, here's even another one that's, you're really not going to build much of a trailing edge of a wing with that. There's plenty of places you can use this wood. It's not like you have to throw it away, especially look at this. This is a beautiful piece of sea grain, but you're not going to use it up on the trailing edge of the wing. Now if I don't have any real nice 48-inch wood, I'll just use up a piece of 36 and put the joint right in the middle. And you can see what the deal really is here is not much of this wood is perfectly straight. In fact, this was probably cut from one block that as you relieved the block it just sprang. In the world of wood cutting, that's called springing. Anyway, out of I don't know how many sheets, 20 I guess, it looks like we may not even have one piece. Eliminate that. Looks like we might have a choice of 4 pieces here. In our wildest dream we might have a few. I'll tell you, I'm so disappointed in the way this wood is. It's certainly not like you would send this back. This is really nice punky wood, but you just need to get a straight piece. And the shame of this is a lot of this is 4 to 6 pound sea grain. This is a nice piece of, well, there's more than one piece of nice sea grain. This actually would be wood that should be used for making ribs. In fact, I'm going to put this aside. Even though it's 48-inch wood, this would be ideal for making up a nice set of ribs for a sea fire. Assuming we're going to make 16th ribs. But they're really, the disappointing part is, see, this is beautiful sea grain here. The disappointing part is, and this is why I put all this stuff on camera. I don't try to doctor this up to make it look like, hey, when Wendy orders wood, it comes in perfect. It doesn't. This is probably wood I should be using up to make ribs, or to make something where it's not one long span. It won't really matter. But I do have a choice of 4 pieces here, and I'll try to pick. I'm not even going to weight them. I'm just going to take the straightest one. Yeah, these would be usable. Another thing that, another little tip that I've found over the years really helps me. I'm always trying, in the beginning of my illustrious modeling career, I always try to make one X-Acto knife last for a whole plane, and I'd try sharpening them, and I'd try every possible way of getting more mileage out of them. And the reality was, it was hurting my workmanship. Now I go to the opposite extreme. I get a box of 100 of these XL blades, and I want to use them up in the course of doing a plane. I want all the joints to be cut, razor edged, and everything. And it's this XL knife, the soft handle knife, is the one I like the best right now. Use the blades. It's hard to convince people to use some blades up in the course of building. And there's some people that try to get a whole plane, and I used to be one of them, but no more. Anyway, what I want to make sure now, believe it or not, out of that whole thing, and this is the kind of thing that you don't think really happens, but it does. I ordered 20 sheets of wood. There's 4 real nice ones out of 20, and that's about par for the course. What I'm looking for here is a real straight piece of wood, though. I really want this to be straight as an arrow, if possible. Okay, now what I was going to do, and I really don't even have to do it, I was going to take this piece and cut it in half for the trailing edge. Thing is, it's such a nice straight edge, I can use either edge. When a wood has a bow in it, you want to run the cut down the middle and then flip that over so you have the 2 straight edges on a trailing edge. In this case, they're both straight, so it doesn't even matter. And you notice one piece of 48-inch wood conveniently does the whole wing. That's just random, but that's the way that worked out. This is one of the things I've been using lately. I got a bunch of these. Karen actually bought them for me. She was using them in her office and said, gee, these would work nice for your modeling, because they make a very fine point. It's called a Pilot Precise, what does it say, extra fine. And what I use these for, just a typical thing like today, I need to measure out the middle of this wood. I want to make it 2 inches. Of course, when you get a kit, the wood will probably already be 2 inches. You won't have to do this step, and it'll probably be 36-inch wood that's cut to 24-inch in length. Conveniently enough, you could almost use 24-inch wood, put the joint right in the middle. But again, since we do have a couple of decent pieces, that'll just save me from having to make one joint in the middle of the wing. And again, if you had a bowed piece of wood, you really want to get the trailing edge straight at this point. Very important to get that trailing edge. That edge needs to be straight. When you want to cut a long joint like this in wood, and you're working by yourself, gets to be a pain in the neck, really. This is one of the ways, since I don't have any helpers here today, this is one of the ways you can ensure you get a little bit better chance at making a decent cut. Of course, you can put pins along the edge or whatever. And remember, it's that old brand new XL knife trick. Brandy dandy new. How many times have you walked the knife down and halfway through this does that? Ugh. Anyway, this is a little good, nice little tip. Certainly not a world beater, but something you can use. Every level modeler can use. You can always use all the tips you can get. Well, I'm taking the heavier of the 2 rulers, making sure I have this, and boy, it's a nice straight edge for sure. Now, just as a way of holding this in place, I know I have it straight trailing edge. I get a bunch of little pieces of tape. It's not important that this is real level and straight right now until we get the pin jig on it. Right now it's just free floating in midair. A couple of pieces of tape will just help keep it that way. Now, next thing I want to do, I want to get my little piece of trailing edge material that's going to go along the trailing edge tacked in place. This is a good time, you know, if you're going to do a project like this. I just got this from John Brodak yesterday. This is a good time to get a fresh thing of glue. Now, we've been using up old glue to do body work and do all kind of things that really aren't critical. But it's a good time right now. Right now, at the beginning of a wing, day before or 2 days before, get a fresh thing of glue so it kicks off nice. This is a great time to do it. And I like to get a nice fresh tube of thin and get everything at this point in the game tacked in place before I actually make real glue joints. Now, another tip, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to get my little piece of Teflon tubing. If I'm going to do all the glue joints, you can put this, actually you could use these tubes the way they are, but I like to get that little piece of Teflon tubing. I get that from Radio Shack, of all places. Radio Shack has this, and it's really, I don't know what the heck they even use it for. It's just Teflon tubing. It comes on a roll, and that gives me a little bit better shot at getting the joints all nice. What I always do, take a big thick pin, get the end cut down, get the pin in there, and walk it around just a little bit. It swells the casing. Then I can take the Teflon tube and get kind of a tight fit. Doesn't have to be super tight. Then I take a piece of masking tape. This is just to keep it from dripping and drooling until it sets its place. It also stiffens up the edge of it. I've put this on the videos a million times already. Doesn't look that super neat, but it keeps the glue off the tips of your fingers while you're working. Then of course I can just clip this, and that makes a nice little extra tip. Now they sell all kind of fancy tips, but this way I can really get in some corners and angles when I'm doing the construction. But to get a real good joint, this is a piece of 3/8 by 1/4. To get that real nice joint in the back, this piece needs to have a little bit of a taper in it. Now what I did, I just hit it with the plane, and I wanted to see how much of a little angle I could get off 1 or 2 swipes with the sanding block. If you didn't do this, it really wouldn't be the end of the world. You'd just have a little more sanded off the trailing edge. But I think this will let the trailing edge sheeting sit down at the back a little bit nicer. A couple of swipes with a sanding block. I think it'll just make for a nicer, neater sheeting job. Now what I'm trying to accomplish is to get a little bit of a taper. I don't know if you can see this. A little bit of that taper, just a little bit, so it's a perfect match to the trailing edge. The whole thing is with a sanding block, some nice soft paper, make some sawdust, the last few little cuts, a few little pipes. Leave the dust on. The dust will help kick off the CA. Now don't take the dust off. Again, I'm just going to tack this in position here. We're not going to make a permanent joint. Now I can just line this up with the trailing edge. Again, this is a brand new XL Zona saw. Get the center joint laid out. Now at this point it's just tacked in. Nothing's glued permanent, just a few drops of glue tacked in on every second or third rib, just to hold it in position while we lay out the ribs. Now with all the ribs laid out, not that difficult to do. The trick to making this whole system work, to making this wing work actually, is the fact that the ribs all fit, they snap right in place. What I'm going to do is take each one, just line it up with the plan or our pseudo plan here, and again, I don't want to make a permanent joint here. I don't want to make a joint that's, you know, totally solid with glue. I want to just put a tack, just enough to hold this in position. One little drop of glue is usually enough. Again, I want the wing to be flexible until we get it up on the pin jigs. I spoke with John Brodak the other night, and he's thinking of a couple of other ways of making these little pin jigs, and I hope he's going to produce them and sell them. They're a great little product. In fact, they're a good little product. You could put a review in Stunt News. Model Aviation, I can't imagine that there's a part of the hobby that wouldn't find some way of using those little pin jigs. They're really good. The original time I saw it done, Harold Price was building Valkyrie wings. That's how old that goes. Again, this is a point in time where if you have a helper, it's real nice. Now another way, if you really, I don't know, you really want to make this more rocket science than it has to be, you could take little blocks of wood and just pin the ribs to them so that you would ensure that they're 90 degrees. And I'm pretty much just doing this by eye. But it's one of the things, a lot of people, I think they miss the whole boat on a lot of stuff because they're too busy making rocket science stuff out of something that's basically just balsa wood. And it doesn't need to be within a 10,000th of an inch. It needs to be relatively straight at this point, so when we put it in a pin jig, we don't wind up having a tremendous twist or turn it into a pretzel or whatever. Again, that time window of 4 hours, Mike Kajeski did a big Cardinal, and we did Robert's wing. Of course, he had help. But if you're working on your own, there's very few pieces of this. Now, I like to do one where I'm the only one working on it in the shop, because then I see that little tricks, little tips, little things, little ways of holding things that may be of some value to people watching the tape. You know, the purpose of all the videos is to really help you try to figure some of this out. Make it a lot more fun, if nothing else. But you pretty much can see just how quick this goes together. And remember, it's a tack joint. It's not a permanent joint. You just want to hold it there, just temporarily, and when it's all jigged up in place, like all the parts are laying in perfect equilibrium, that's a good word, then you want to go by, and that's why I like that point on the glue. I can run in all the joints at the same time. Now what I thought of, this was my idea, is by trying to build a wing out of 16th. I had a couple of choices. One of them is I can make a box spar out of the back of the wing with a little bit of sea grain wood. If the wing doesn't seem as strong as I'd like it to be. And another thing the box spar in the back does, it makes it almost impossible to warp the wing when it's out in the sun. So even though it might add maybe a half an hour, I don't know, 45 minutes to the actual building, I think it's a thing worth trying. Now I wanted to line these ribs up just a little bit outside of where the fuselage would be. Again, I'm trying to just give myself a lot of choices here. This is going to be just a little bit outside, because the fuselage is going to want to clamp on. If you're gluing the body over this and it's off to one side, look at this. I can't even get started this morning. Again, I have to tell you, there's a funny phone call. There's a guy in our club named Frank Marino, and he's got trouble with his smoke system on a Piper Cub. Now, you know you've really arrived at the pinnacle of modeling success when people are calling you to fix their smoke systems. Anyway, if there's a better way to build a wing, a different way, it's really irrelevant. This is one of the ways. The rod method. Actually, when we get, at some point in time, we may build one of these on a rod just to see if there's going to be some advantage. I don't think so. This goes so quick. And by doing it over and over, each time you do it, I can't imagine that anybody could not build a wing this way in roughly 4 hours. And the biggest thing is to have the ribs really accurate. If the ribs aren't accurate, if they're off even by just a little bit, that's the whole key. So having a nice set of ribs to start with really makes this whole thing possible. Now, we're still in, I call it free floating mode. This is floating. None of this is glued to the table. There's only a couple of strips of tape holding it down. Okay, but at this point in time, see, I can move this back and forth. I can get it all in alignment any way I want. Next thing I want to do, I want to glue on this top piece of the trailing edge. And I want to get a joint right back here. But again, a temporary joint. I don't want to have a permanent, absolute, final, permanent joint here. I want to be able to move this and adjust it. Now obviously if you had 36-inch wood, you would put the joint right in the center. Now the best way I can tell, let me get a couple of these pins. I just like to pin it in place, and then I can just, one drop of CA will hold it. Now let me tell you, the kind of friends you have in this hobby is, I go to do the mail. Of course, I'm trying to rush to get done the run to the post office, so I never miss a day's delivery. I took a break from my wing construction here. Look what came in the mail. This is almost making me cry. It's the Bert and Ernie Ertnowski. Bert and Ernie, of course, are the two fish. Now, Glenn Kaler and Dawn knew that I was nursing this fish back to health, and with John Pothier's and Midgley's help, it looks like I've got him nursed back to health. By the way, in case this has some application in the real world, I'm getting to be an expert at fish diseases. I don't want to be, but I've been reading. I've got 4 or 5 other books. And boy, I hope this guy makes it. I really love Bert and Ernie. Anyway, this looks like it's from, they didn't sign it, of course, but I can see from Albany. It must be from Glenn Kaler. Anyway, Glenn, Dawn, whoever sent this, hey, Bert and Ernie really appreciate it. I don't know, I just think that's really special. See, this is the kind of thing that you don't mind spending your whole life helping somebody build a plane or whatever it is, buying them pizza, when you know you have good friends. And this certainly is an indication to me that, well, the fish have good friends anyway. Just remember when I was sick, how many people wrote and sent to me. Now, I know you're going to think this is crazy, but hey, how can you not love this guy? Come on. That's Ernie, and Ernie needs to get better. Come on, Ernie. Get better, get better. All right, let's go back and build a wing. Now again, with this all tacked in, maybe we're not going to get this done in 4 hours because the phone's been ringing, the mail's been ringing. With everything tacked in, you just need a couple of drops of glue. Even leave the pins in if you have to, so you can do some final manipulation on this. I want to get the 1/4 inch spars out. I need I need 6 relatively straight pieces. If I don't have them, what I'll do is set the stripper to strip off nice, neat pieces. And of course, don't use anything that's a pretzel. That's the whole trick here. Again, what I'm looking for here, I'm certainly not looking for the 6 lightest pieces. I'd like the straightest ones. Part of anything, wood selection. That one is not going to make it into the playoffs. Again, sometimes you have to go to a hobby shop or whatever. That one we can use. A lot of people that have looked at a lot of these videos have, that one's not going to make it, have told me one of the biggest things they've picked up is just how to identify good wood. That one's not so great. We'll put him as a maybe. Again, of course, we need 6 of them. Let's see, that one's a pretzel. Now, you could force these in. You know, if you're making a ringmaster or something, this is fine. But we hope that. Now, here you go. Would you really want to have that one in? You want to, and if you don't have a choice, go take a piece of 1/4 inch wood and strip them off. Now, that's, I think we should have ordered Dutchy. Look at this. Just get an idea. And if you can, go down to a hobby shop or go down somewhere if you're building, or if you're building from a kit, you pretty much can assume that the wood that comes in there is going to be decent. Again, I'm looking at probably 25. These come 25 to a bundle. And there's 2 good ones out of 25 so far. I guess, so what I'm going to have to do is go strip some off with the stripper. This one, I don't know. There's 2 I can live with here. But that's about, I'd guess that's about average. Now, just to give you an idea, even this one is just, if you get used to sighting wood, sight down it, sight it, twist it, sight it, you'll see it's not as good as it looks when it's sitting in a hobby shop, that's for sure. But you really would like to get 6 relatively straight pieces to start with. Idea. I didn't have even a good piece of 1/4 inch that I was really crazy about, but I had a reasonably straight piece of 3/8. So what I've done is I set my little stripper to strip up 1/4 inch pieces of 3/8. Then I can spin them around, so in effect they'll become 1/4 inch squares. And I can strip this down and hope, you know, I can hope. Now just, I don't know if you can see the difference. You just now have to run it through the other way to get it straight. Again, it's not perfect, but this is a whole lot better than what I have a choice of out of the rack. I'm not looking for super light punk wood. I'm looking for straight wood, especially for a spar like this. Again, the advantage of doing this is what they usually do when they strip wood. This is an old woodcutter's trick. What they try to do is they try to use up relatively hard wood on the 1/4 inch because it doesn't spring as much. But I'm not concerned with that. What I'd like to get is just a straight piece of 4 to 6 pound wood. And sometimes you have to really, in effect, make your own wood. Make your own wood sizes. Having a stripper lets you do that. Again, this piece, like, let's see if it bowed. This piece stayed pretty straight all through the whole cut, so I'm going to cut this up into 1/4 inch squares, just so the next guy that builds a wing will have a couple of straight pieces, because those other ones, I don't know. The trouble is when you get that kind of wood and it springs and then pops, it's just difficult to use. Even the free flight people, you should see how they select wood. They go crazy running around at the rack selecting wood. What a difference. Amazing. Tip. This little master ass screw plane. One of the things that happens is the blade gets dull. And since we're starting to get into where we want to get some real accurate cuts, this is a really good time to get a new blade in there. You'd be surprised how many people, I mean, to me it's unbelievable. The difference between doing real quality work and spending the same amount of time and just making, you know, average stuff. is just blades, sandpaper, and the right thinner. And the same amount of work equals a fantastic plane instead of one that's mediocre, overweight, and twisted, all at the same time. Now what I wanted to do is get a brand new blade. Now I have to cut this the other way. So in effect it's going to wind up with 1/4 inch square pieces. This is where you really hate to slip with the thing and get that knife up under your fingernail. You'll only do that once, I was told by Harold Price. How wrong he was. Now we have a piece that obviously we could use for a cap strip or something. Okay, now it's as straight as I can possibly make it. Now, again, the next choice is to look down the piece. This piece has a little bow out at the end. Use the straightest end because we're going to cut half of this off. See how much gets cut off? So take the straightest piece, the straightest part of the piece. Again, if you just think about this, it makes common sense. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out how to get this all nice and straight and even. Well, maybe you have to be. I don't know. With a nice new blade, how nice that cuts. It's unbelievable. The trick is new blades. If you could only convince people, and it's difficult to convince them of this, new blades, new sandpaper, and thinner. Those are the 3 ingredients that go toward, instead of making multiples of mediocrity, you just allow yourself to get better automatically. No matter how you do it, you just want to, again, there's no glue on this spar yet. Just want to drop the ribs right in place. Have the fit of the ribs has to hold it in place. It has to be a real accurate fit. This is why it's a pain in the neck cutting your own ribs. And now as you go down, of course, you want to line up each rib with the plan. Now it helps me if I just tape this in position now just to hold it, because what I want to do, you see the little gap in the spar? What I want to do is take my old Bud McKnight sanding stick. I want to get a nice even joint on that, press it together, but then all my ribs will be out of alignment and I'm going to have to go back and check each rib one by one by one. That's just a temporary joint, but I want to get that because that'll set all the ribs at 90 degrees this way before I put the top spar in. Now you got to kind of really just be delicate here, because what this does, it's going to set all the ribs at a little bit different angle, but this will give us a nice butt joint. Once I take this piece out, I should get a relatively close joint. Relative, of course, is a, shouldn't say a relative term. And we're just looking for a tack joint here, not a permanent joint. And this now allows me to set all the ribs. Now I'm trying to look from the top and just set each one. Work right off the plans. Again, no glue here. The parts themselves interlock. That's what makes a nice, easy construction. If the parts are a sloppy fit and they're falling out, you never get this far. Or it takes you 4 times as much time. Again, you wouldn't want to have the ribs this, and you wouldn't want to have them that they're all not sitting 90 degrees. Now you can't lock in the 90 degrees straight up and down until you get the top spar on. And this is where, if you have a helper, my suggestion is, if you have a helper that can be there for the day that you're going to do this, probably if you had 2 kits, you could build both wings in one day. You help your friend, let him help you. You wind up with 2 wings in the same day. Okay. Now each one is lined up. No matter what plan you have, that's what you want to get. Now, before I even put any glue on, I want to drop the top spar right in, and as I do it, make sure I'm not laying the ribs over each way. Again, it's that press fit between the parts that allows you to basically lay the whole thing out without just having glue on a trailing edge. It allows you to get it all pieced together with just little dots of glue, and then get it into the pin jig, and it's ready to final glue. Once it's lined up in the pin jig and you can glue it, it's a piece of cake. You're an hour away from having it done. Again, if you just constantly maintain that 90 degrees, the only thing that can hurt you here is if you have a sloppy fit somewhere and the spars want to keep jumping out, or you can take each one and just pinch it until it's laying nice and flat with the top of the rib. Again, the old days when you used to take forever to build a wing. I can remember building Nobler wings. Oh my God. A whole weekend. Okay, now of course the next thing, just tack glue in the leading edge. Just getting that leading edge, one drop of glue on each piece is all I need to do, and then I can get this up on a pin jig. And once you're happy that they're I don't have any glue at all on the spar. I could just pull the spar right out now if I still wanted to. It's nice having CA that kicks right off. Now I want to get a nice butt joint up here so I can get the angle in before I even line it up. Again, easiest way, one drop of CA on each rib. Don't even make a permanent joint yet. Leave the dust on, the dust will help kick it off. Actually, when you get this technique working for you, you look forward to building a wing. Just the slightest little bit on each part. Hold it right in alignment long enough. Now about the pin jig, you can make your own pin jig, and we've done that on videos before. I'm not going to go back and redo that. As long as all the pins are the same height off the table. And John Brodak had a couple of other good ideas that I thought were worthwhile. First of all, you could use up some old motor mounts and drill little tiny holes where the pins would press in, or you can just use scraps of wood with a center line on it. You really don't have to have that. This is not a machine shop job. We're just trying to get everything that the trailing edge and the leading edge is the same height off a level table while we do the work and while we put all the permanent joints in. Get this off here so it's easier to work on. Well, when you have new blades, new Zona saws, oh my God. That's what I hated about being poor years ago. And I mean, we were really, we're talking poor, butter knife poor. One X-Acto knife per year poor. It was still fun building models. The question of taking out all the pins, take all the tape off the trailing edge, get out those little fixtures if you don't have any, make some up, or improvise some other way. It doesn't matter really what way it is, as long as this wing is up off the table, equal on the leading edge, equal on the trailing edge. I've just been using this to hold this in place. We don't really need the plan anymore. I would say it's reasonably straight. And we don't really need to plan anymore. And again, I want to scrape the table, clear the table off. Again, even doing a little project like this, the table gets ginked up. I don't need to plan anymore. I want to lay this right on the trailing edge here, make sure it's straight. That looks pretty decent. I had a center line on here, but from just truing up the trailing edge, I ran a sanding block down here and it took about 3/4 of it off. I want to make sure I have a good solid line on here, and I'm just using my finger as a reference, because that's where I'm going to insert the pins. You may remember from a previous video, or even from one of these. These are pieces of wood that have a very accurate cut. We just ran them through a saw so that all the pins are exactly the same height off the table. And of course you can use one pin as a reference to reference the other one if you're in doubt. Some of these have been used 4 or 5 times, so maybe there's glips of glue on them or whatever. So the first thing you would probably want to do is get out the old gauge. This was just printed in the last Stunt News, by the way. Bob Martens made this for me from a Walt Russell design. And you want to check that all your pins are the same height off the table. Obviously, just loosen the screw. Set this. Yep, see how nice it slides. Using the gauge, you can check that each pin is that height off the table when it's laying flat. Again, you always want to have one gauge as a reference. Now, supposing these were not, if they were low, you could put a piece of paper underneath them, whatever. They're just going to get tack glued to the table. If they had a blob of glue and they were too high, just run them on a sanding block a little bit. But always reference off something. You can put a scratch on a side of a Band-Aid case or something, but reference all your pins are the same height. And you need maybe 8 or 10 of these. It takes 5 minutes to make them. But now, thinking with the conversation I had with John Brodak, if this was made out of a piece of hardwood like motor mount material, and you could put a precision drill right through, hey, maybe you could make these 1 foot long. See, again, each time I do a wing, I try to come up with a better system than the time before. In fact, John, I just came up with well, I'm coming up with more ideas. If you had let's say you had a piece of motor mount, hardwood anyway, pine, the whole length of the wing. Well, one of the things you could do is put it on a milling machine and run precision holes right down. Tack glue that to the table and just run your pins in. Hey, just another idea. More to come on this. I'm sure John Brodak will come up with something really usable and doable. Now, he's working off a sheetrock table, as far as I know, that doesn't have glass on it. So if you didn't have glass, maybe wood is more appropriate. But the whole idea is to get the whole wing up off the table. And if you didn't want to do this, you could just use scraps of wood, run the gauge there, and pin the wing in place. There's a lot of ways to do it. That's the thing to emphasize, is just to get the whole wing, that the center line around the whole perimeter of the wing is the same height off the table, no matter how you do it. Okay, with this whole thing laying here on the table, now I remember Harold, I'm just going back in my mind here, what Harold used to do was a little bit different. He used to draw a center line. Remember, he was doing Valkyrie wings where there was cuffs and they were elliptical, very difficult wings to build. But still, if you have a center line on every one, you could make enough blocks of wood that each rib could be held up off the table. Just be another way to do it. Again, now the spar, if you remember right, the spar is not even attached. The spar is just sitting in there. Everything is kind of free floating now. So now I want to go by, before I do anything else, and check with this gauge that completely around the wing I'm on center. And if I'm not, I can adjust it, move the pins, and just back and forth. Trailing edge, leading edge, whole perimeter of the wing, exactly the same height off the table. Next thing to do is take the gauge and lock it in. Lock it in nice and solid so it doesn't move at all, and then go around that whole wing with the gauge. That gives you a good double check. And if you need more blocks, or if it's too flimsy, springy in some spot, block it up any way you can. Again, I'm using a table for my reference. Going right along. This gives me the reference of the gauge and all the pins. Now remember, if any of these are wrong, it's not a big deal. Break the block off and move it. You have a little bit of variation. In fact, I'm going to put some little blocks underneath you just to stiffen it up, I think. Okay, I guess that would set the trailing edge at 0. You pretty much can check right down a leading edge without a problem. Now it looks like I'm a little low right in the middle. What I really want to do is raise this up a little. This way. Oh, now it's a little bit too high. Okay, just re-glue. It's always good to sight the wing. Another good way is look right through the rod holes. That usually will give you a good reference. But once you're happy with all the references, it's time to set the glue. Now I try to make sure that the spar is even with the rib, even though I'm going to dress this off with a sanding block. One rib at a time. Let one kick off. It's easiest for me if I do the top first. Now what I'll do is I'll do one panel and then go back and check it that I haven't built in some kind of a crazy twist. I call that babysitting, but it's not the real word. Then I can go back once I'm happy that the spar is glued in place, because this is all building stress into the wing. I can go back, tack glue the leading edge. And if you check it every step of the way, the odds are real good. The odds are exceptional that you will have one straight wing and you will not have one of these funny things where when you put it out in the sun all the stress relieves and you wind up having a pretzel. Now while I have that, I want to check again. It may seem like overkill doing all this checking, but once it's right forever. It's right till the next ice age. Now I can go right down, get a decent glue joint on every one of the rib fronts, and all I need to do then is make sure the bottom is, the spar is sitting in. I see it needs a little finagling here. And the whole idea of tack gluing it at this point in time is that you don't wind up where you're married to something right now. This spar kind of dropped down. That's normal. Again, the whole key thing is getting nice tight fits between the spar and the ribs. When that's right, you're in. Needless to say, then just go right over to the other wing panel. What's really nice is once you've gone through this once, the second time you go through it, you almost can be daydreaming. It's kind of self-explanatory. And before I do any gluing, just a double check. You never have too many double checks on this kind of stuff. And I'm sighting down each one, trying to make sure I haven't got the rib off 90 degrees. Doing that pretty much by eye. If the spar is sticking up, I can press it down. If it's a little low, I can bring it up to the height of the rib because that's what's going to attach the sheeting. And I guess one of the things you should always consider is, no matter what, whether it's foam wings, built-up wings, or whatever, is try a couple of different ways of building a wing, and you may stumble upon a way that works real good for you. I always hear people tell me how much they like building on rods, but some people are more comfortable building, well, foam wings or whatever. It's not a contest to see. You don't get any points for building a wing. You get points for having it done. And it doesn't take you all day to do it. Now, while we were off camera, I was just advised this would be a short day. We have some company, unexpected company coming over that we haven't seen in about a year, so I'm going to try to get about another half an hour of work on this. You probably have to pack it in then for now. Okay. Okay, with that done and all the checking of the reference lines, I guess I'm ready to go pick out some sheeting. See, now I already did the sheeting a couple days ago. I laid out what I thought was the nicest pieces of sheeting, so I've got that squared away. But again, I would always want to have the lightest piece on the inboard, heaviest piece on the outboard. Nicest pieces that are perfectly straight on the top. If you have to use up one that's got a little whoop-de-doo, put it on the bottom. Again, if you check it every step of the way, the odds are real good. You're going to be real happy with it. Now, if you feel, see, I know some people are heavy-handed, I am, that you're going to press down on this for any reason, you can just stuff little scrap blocks of wood under here. You could also take a piece, and I was just thinking of this just as a tip or whatever, take a piece of scrap, glue it to the table and put a pin in it if you felt you really wanted to press down even more. You could also do the Brodak thing, which is put a piece of wood under the spar so you can press it down onto the table. What I try to do is just be very gentle with it at this point in time. See, this is where it's nice to have all your wood graded. I got all the sea grain in one pile. I don't have to even fool with that. I've got all the wood weighed. I think we did this on camera. According to how much each sheet weighs, lightest to the heaviest. So obviously I can take the light pieces, put them on the inner wing, heavy pieces on the outer wing. And that right in place. Oh, look at this, President Nixon. Now what I can do is, I got it pinned in place. Again, if you're working with a helper, here's where you really make up some time. When you're working alone, I'm only gluing to the leading edge, not to the ribs. Important not to get any glue on the ribs at this time. Just do one bay at a time. Again, this is where we saved a little time by getting this wood all graded out ahead of time. Right now, if I had to take 10-15 minutes weighing wood and figuring out which piece is going where and C grains and A grains, you'll lose time. Okay, now assuming that that's a nice... Okay, I want to get this, since this is not the lightest piece here in the world. In fact, it's kind of on the... See, none of this wood is really the way it should be years ago when you had really 2-pound wood. What I want to do is I want to get some ammonia and soak this with ammonia so it tends to conform. Now the idea of the ammonia is, if you just wrap it around, if you have really punk 3-pound wood, yeah, that's going to work perfect. But when you have a little bit heavier wood, and I'd like to have a little bit heavier wood, since we're trying to do something that originally was 3/32 wood with 16th, I certainly wouldn't want to put 2-pound wood up here. A little bit of ammonia lets the wood conform to the shape without any problem at all. You don't wind up with building in a big stress, and as soon as you take the pins out of the table, the wing pretzels on you. Now, of course, you really breathe this in is a thrill. If you really get them where it really bothers you, you can always use Windex. You can even use water. But if you can take the smell of the ammonia, or if you can get a fan going, that's a big help. You really don't want to, I don't want to soak it, I just want to get the outside. The outside is then going to expand from having moisture on it, and it'll tend to conform to the wood. I wouldn't want to soak this and do this. I just want to have the side that I want to expand wet. Again, not having to do this. If you had the ultimate piece of light punk wood, you really wouldn't even have to do this, but trying to build this with realistic wood, not with, you know, old wood from 20 years ago where you could get 3-pound wood at length. And that's the other thing of, if you build it with 16th, it really doesn't have to be 4-pound wood. You might be able to get away with using 8-pound wood, because the wood itself will be thinner by 50%. So this is really a valid test that I want to do. Just wipe it on, let it get soft, take a minute or so. The wood is just a little bit, this is 4-inch wood. I want to trace where, even leave it a little bit bigger than it has to be for now, but just trace off the extra. That's where having a nice big ruler comes in handy. It'll just make it easier to lay this in place. Make sure I'm not undercutting it too much. There we go. Again, a nice brand new blade. I trimmed off the excess off the edge. Again, I want to catch that rib. Now what I want to do is make sure I'm conforming just the way I want to here. That looks real nice. There's a lot of ways to do this. I don't have any favorite right now. And just let that kick. This is why it's nice to have the wood nice and solid, the wing nice and solid. Demonstration of what happens. This was a perfectly straight piece of wood. You wet one side, it tends to conform. When this dries out, the wood cells will be reset, and we will have built a lot of strength into that leading edge that normally wouldn't be there. And because Karen has the heat turned up in the house now, this is probably going to dry kind of quick. So I want to run over and just repeat this whole thing on the other wing. But first I need to make that center joint. One way we can get this joint relatively straight anyway, we know we have a 1/2 inch spacing here, so I can just use the tape to follow the rib. The idea being, I want to get a doubler under here. This is real important because the fuselage is going to be hooking onto this sheeting right here, and I don't want to be going onto just nothing but a piece of 1/16 sheeting. Again, when you have new blades, piece of cake. And I want to get a good seam. This is going to get buried inside the fuselage. I want a nice seam here. Now I want to make a little doubler inside of here. I can take a little piece of scrap. I want the grain going side to side and just tack glue it in there for now. I want to go from rib to rib, so in effect between the two ribs, doesn't have to be fancy schmancy, but I'll have a doubler. And I want the grain going side to side. See, this piece broke. I'll make another piece, but I want the grain going side to side. And I want that up inside. If I can get that right up inside there, I'll make another piece. Really won't be a big deal. Now the trick is to try to get that piece up in there somehow. A good way to do it is to catch it with a knife. Actually, I just thought of another way of doing this. See, I'm always trying to invent ways of doing this. Another way to do this would be to sheet inside the two ribs. We could do that on a future wing, just to see how that worked out. Your pins will kind of hold it there too. Get the pins and put an angle back on them. Yeah, that would be a better way to do this. See, that's what you do when you do real development work. You go and do this stuff and figure out how you can make each one a little bit better. It does take time, though. That's one of the things I hope you get off of the videos. I hope you get some ideas that you can even share with me. Send me your ideas. I'm really perfectly willing to learn from anybody. I just wish I knew this stuff years ago. A little extra CA will harden that up. Give that a good joint and just let it kick off. In fact, what I can do is get an old Q-tips here. It's another thing I use a million of in the course of building a plane, Q-tips. Yeah, a nicer way to do this would have been in the front here, the sheet between the two ribs, and glue each piece down. See, that'll stiffen up the whole center of the wing where that body is going to rest. Because the body is going to want to be twisting, and the wing is not going to want to twist. And there's going to be a point where the two come together, right from the high point of the wing to maybe an inch in front of the wing where it wants to twist all the time. I'll leave the dust on so that the next piece will just kick right off. Just the easiest way here is just pin each edge. Run some pins down there to give you a good joint. Pretty much redundant, except now I need to angle out this centerpiece so I have a nice tight joint. I won't put this whole thing on camera. It's just going to be redundant here for a while. But again, just checking each time I do one of these operations. Go back with that little gauge. Make sure you haven't moved the wing, leaned on it, sat on it. And once this gets pressed down, I can just trim this off for a nice butt joint, fill that with glue, wrap it right down, and we'll have the whole leading edge on here. Now I can almost do this by eye. If I saved a little piece, I probably could have done it that way too. This small of amount of material, it's easier to sand it off than it is to try to cut it with, even with a brand new blade. I can tell you how good I'm getting. Karen made an eye test for me next week. Actually, I haven't gotten my eyes tested when you get my age. And I'm doing a lot of close-up work. There you go. Now I'm pretty much doing what the other side, just getting a little bit of wetness on one side of the sheeting. Things you can do. Because this one is already dry, I want to get this one dry so it sets the wood cells, and then I want to lay out the center sheeting and a little splice in the middle. So you can use a hairdryer on a low setting just to kind of kick this off. Again, the smell is, well, disgusting is the right word. I've checked all the lines. It hasn't moved at all actually in the whole construction. I must be getting better at this. Maybe not better, as you just do more of it. Before I put the center sheeting on here, because remember this is 16th now, this is not 3/32, I want to lay out a spar doubler so there's just a little bit more material in the middle of this. Get the old pen out, and I can figure out pretty much just by eyeballing it. Go over to the sanding block and just take this off. This is now the center. a nice, easy way to do it. Now I could do the final little dressing off here. Put this on the floor. This fit in. Mark exactly where I have to notch this out. Always leave the dust on. And we can bend it just a little bit. There we go. I want it level with the ribs, so let me take a little more off. If you wanted to, if you had a little bit of carbon fiber laying around, you could throw a little carbon fiber in here. I think it would be overkill for this size plane, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. I want to make sure I got this level. I can get a nice butt joint in there with the sheeting. Now, because what I did, I made a pattern when I did Robert's wing, when Robert did Robert's wing. Get this permanently glued in here. And that was for 3/32. Now for this wood, I want to extend it out just a little bit out to the next rib base. But I'm going to use the same basic concept of eliminating a stress riser. If you draw this sheeting right off here, right here is where it's going to break every time. So I want to put that little flare in there, which is actually on a big Cardinal too. I'll make sure I lay this out with C grain. Step one, of course, is establish a center line. I want to use C grain on this. So let me establish I want to go out the extra rib. This may look like or seem like a little bit of overkill, but I need to go out that far. This is my center. But because it's 16th, I want to get rid of the stress riser at all costs. Now I need to figure out my center point right about here. Okay. Again, one way to lay this out, this is not a scientific way, but you could run this tape even with the leading edge. Just eyeball the difference. Cut it a little bit on the small side, of course. And this will give you the angle working up this way. Get it parallel to that. Bring it down to the point. That'll now establish that line for you. And of course I'll use a straight edge to do this. This is just to rough it in. It's going to disappear up here. And once I have a pattern, this is going to end out here. I really don't even need that line. I can trace the other edge out. I know I can end it right here, so I can just pretty much lose this. Use that up on the bottom. Oh. And now obviously you can trim, get this finalized in. If this was 3/32, I would just copy Robert's pattern, that pattern that we made, and that would be the end of it. But okay, now I've got it looks like I've taken too much off one side. But this will be relatively easy to do, is I can catch these two pieces back here, put a pin mark up in the front here. I can just trim this way up into the... Again, I like to get a halfway nice joint on this if I can. Okay, that looks pretty decent. I can just tape this in position. This will hold this. I'll get a decent fit there. Okay. Now I can lay out the true edge of the sheeting here, which I'd like to have right here. I want to go out past the rib just a little bit. Give me a little clearance. Now I need to make a centerpiece, a center dot right in here with whatever angle I want to have this sheeting tie into. Actually, that's a little bit steep. Again, eyeball. The idea is just to get rid of the stress riser. That's all I want to do here, is get rid of that stress riser. And I really think this is going to allow us, I really think we're going to be able to make these wings out of 16th, which will make them lighter. Makes it a little bit easy to bend the sheeting too. And then even if the wood isn't super ultra duper, always have your tools ready at the moment of truth here. I want to make this edge just a little bit, a bigger radius than, and I'll leave a little extra, than a sanding drum. And then I'll do the final cut with a sanding drum. So that now establishes and believe me when I tell you, one of the most important things I think in getting a wing to be stressed properly is getting these little corners. Without these corners, all the stress concentrates in that one little area, and it almost guarantees it'll be, even if it doesn't break, it'll be weaker than it needs to be. Now of course, once I get this piece made up, well, I'll make the bottom piece up too. I need to make a pattern. Of course, I can make up my extra piece. Find another piece of sea grain. This will save me a little bit of layout time later just by tracing this out. I always think in terms of patterns. Use up some of the wood that may not be suitable for anything else. It'll definitely be good enough for this kind of a deal. A lot of times it's helpful if you pin this or thumbtack it right in place. But now you have your pattern for the bottom, and I'll make another one up off camera to put with the plans that we're going to draw. Okay, we got two of these ready. That'll save me a little bit of time when I go to lay out the bottom sheeting. Now before I glue these on, there's one other thing I want to do. I want to get some of my scrapped sea grain. I want to make sure this is sea grain, in fact. I have plenty of it, so it's no problem. And I want to box this. I want to box these in. So all I really need to do here is make one pattern up because they don't have to be right even with the end. They can be in a little bit, out a little bit. I'll just make one pattern up. But the biggest thing is you want the grain vertical. You don't want the grain horizontal. And what I really want to do is leave the dust on. The dust will help kick it off. And try to get as reasonably tight a fit as I can expect here. That one's a little bit bigger than this one. The end rib is tight. I think you can see what I'm trying to accomplish here. And while that's kicking off, I can glue my finger to it. Because the grain is vertical, that's the whole thing that locks this in. I checked all my little measurements again and now lock this sucker in. I'll just make all the rest of these up, especially the ones in the center, because this is going to act like a vertical web for the whole wing, and it'll make it very torsionally resistant. Even though it's 16th wood, I don't think you need to do this if you do a 3/32 wing, but with a 16th, this really adds a lot of rigidity. This combined with the squares on the front spar, it actually makes a double spar, a box spar wing. Okay, all the webbing is in, especially important the one in the center, because we're going to put a crack in there for the horn. Want to stiffen that up as much as possible. And that's the step that really locks it in place even more than the putting on the leading edge sheeting. That trailing edge should be like an arrow right now. Okay, now we can get this piece glued on, make up a little piece for the trailing edge. And we might not be able to get a whole lot more done today. The trick here is to run the seam, the center lined up, start at one end, just run the seam. That's all I'm interested in right now. Once I flip it over, I can get the glue on the bottom. Now I can just tack this in here for right now, just to hold it down in place. Okay, once this kicks now, I want to lay out this little piece that's going to fit back here. Okay, I gotta find an appropriate piece of wood for this little piece. Now, boy, I'll tell you, the phone is ringing, everything. Company. I want to strip a piece off, just connect the dots, even though it's oversized. In fact, I can whack this off too. Just to connect the dot piece. Now, of course, step one is just get the piece so it fits in there. In fact, a little bit on the tight side wouldn't be bad either. And I want to put my little radiuses in there. And what that gives you the piece in one shot. You get the two edges first, and then trace down and get the little radiuses on there. I'm going to try to get everything nice and lined up here. You know, those little radiuses in the corner, so important. I think they are anyway. Shows you what I know. Anyway, I've been monitoring Ernie all day here. He gets get well cards and I don't. I'm just trying to get the seam sanded smooth and then hit it again with CA. What happens, all the dust goes into the crack and this makes for a nice tight seam. The only trouble is we're coming up on the end of this session. Thanks to this company, I don't want to say anything. I would rather be working down here. But anyway, we'll get the shop cleaned up when we do the cap strips. Next time we get a session going here. Just hate breathing this dust in. Next thing I'm going to do tonight, I got that piece of sea grain that I didn't use up. I want to just strip off some cap strips because this will remind me. See what this aggravates the hell out of me. Whenever you have unannounced company, here I had this planned. I was going to finish this wing today. I'm complaining. I really like having company. Haven't seen these people in a long time, and hopefully we won't see them again in a long time. Interrupting my building program here. Anyway. I want to thank Glenn and Dawn again. By the way, this is a good thing. You can use up some of that twisted up 48-inch wood. I didn't even think about that. But sea grain, anytime you're doing a cap strip, definitely sea grain. This is a good place to use it up. In this way, this will remind me, see, with my old brain damage, not remembering what to do next here, it's always a problem. What time is company coming, baby? 5-ish?
It's after 3:30.
Oh, I gotta rush. Gotta go now. You hear the wife? Gotta go now. Gotta go now. As always happens in my house, my wife has the final say. Anyway, see you tomorrow.
This one's cute.
Yeah, we had you the CD cover shop.
That's a
I
cute
haven't
one.
seen any of them.
That's what I love that one.
Let's see, I never even saw these yet.
God, that's cute.
This is for your album?
She's got hair like you.
Yeah, right.
I love this. When you want to say?
Yeah, this is soon to be. Stacy, say hello.
No,
soon.
come on!
Soon,
Single time.
soon to be. Actually, this is for her CD. They're finally getting their band to press a CD.
This one.
Wait a second.
Oh my God.
All right.
Oh, this Wendy.
This
Wendy,
one is
this
a
one's
stair.
great.
Let me see the best one.
This
Well,
is
you
one
don't
of
know what
The one where they all look like
this
they're
is
on
one of the
drugs.
best ones.
What do you mean they always look like they're on
Rob,
drugs?
you look like you're hot in this one.
Yeah, you're hot, Rob.
Oh, thank you.
You two of you.
Isn't it fun having company, Rob?
Looks adorable in this.
Oh my God.
Who's?
I was pushing out my stomach there. I don't know why.
Yeah, you look a little.
You look a little heavy there.
I really
You look
pushed
a
out my
little
stomach.
fat,
Look
in
at this
fact.
one. Wait a minute.
You have no
I
stomach.
must have been pushing it out though, and it sucks.
What's the name of the group, Rob? Did you guys have an...
Stacy Rose.
Stacy Rose, okay. Soon these people will be world famous.
Rob, you look great.
Here she is.
Let's see, now look.
Wait, get
This is our baby, Stacy Rose. Look for this at your nearest record store.
I've seen. I think I've been missing that.
Stairs.
Oh, I love having company. Oh my God.
There or not,
Oh, you look adorable.
Now, would you buy a record with these people on the cover? Look at this.
Music to follow.
Yeah, let's hear the music. Come on, what's the baloney here? This is like...
You're listening to the music.
This is...
Put this back.
Put the real music on.
These are beautiful too.
Oh, this is
Get some
great.
Bing Crosby albums
great.
out.
This is
Yeah,
great.
that one. That one.
Stacy, you're gonna be famous. You're gonna buy me my own flying field someday.
Millie, did you see this one?
Yes.
I could be building a wing
That
right
one
now.
upstairs.
I think this is gonna
This
be.
Could have my wing finished if it wasn't for this company.
You know what?
And then a cover shot might be
She
this
must come
one.
out
The
before
other cover
Benefield
shot.
a lot.
I think that's a good.
No, they don't have contests out. That's only radio control out there.
Oh, that's only radio control.
Yeah, yeah. I think they might change that soon.
Shows you what I know.
Would
Let me see this one. Yeah,
you
I still
buy
like
an
the one-
album
the one
from
on
this
the-
girl?
the
The
stair
pole's
one.
too far over from it.
Are we all
Pole's-
looking
It's
at
like
this
you
one,
guys,
I think?
and then.
What is this, like a
Yeah, I
Halloween
think you all
thing
look
here?
great in this
It's
one
like
too.
pumpkin.
They were
Rob
in.
looks
They
so
were in
happy.
an apple orchard.
They were an apple. I thought they were picking pumpkins or something here. Look
Which
at
one do
this.
I look the best in?
Look at this.
You
Looks
look
like you're all
the best.
getting an enema or something.
You look the best in the one on the couch.
How many pictures do you have here?
And that one. That one.
Oh
you
my
look great in.
God.
That one, right?
It's like little raggets.
Yeah, I
So
like this
cute.
one.
Raggets.
This really is our singing. I'm not kidding. This is really gonna be. This is my ticket to early retirement here. They're shushing me. I'm being shushed. You maybe think I'm kidding, but they are really up there playing rock and roll. Stacy's gonna cut her first CD this week. We have album covers and everything, and of course my priority here is. Oh, Ernie, how are you doing tonight, Ernie? Anyway, I could have built the whole wing tonight, but we had company. All right, Ernie, as long as you're doing okay, I'm okay. We'll see you in the morning. Ernie. It's true. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and they're still playing loud music. I could have finished my wing. Now, in today's mail, I open it up. The first letter, Bill Hummel sends some pictures of his new daughter. And notice that she's got a pro stunt handle. Well, that's the way to do it. Another nice picture. Always nice to start the day off with a start off each day with a smile. Hey, congratulations, Bill and Ann. You guys are okay. I don't care what Scott Smith says about you. And no Bobby Hunt handles, only Windy handles. Okay. Back to work. Okay, back to reality. Back to trying to get work done on this wing. I want to cap strip this wing up. One of the things that is a good little tip on cap strips, always use sea grain wood. I think we put that on the tape when we did it last time. Always make the cap strip about a 1/64 of an inch bigger than it has to be. Of course, a brand new blade. And now what I like to do is do the final fit. If it's a little too big, just hit it with a sanding block. But it should bow up just a little bit so it locks itself in position. Now, of course, it's a relatively easy thing. Just go right down the line on both sides. Purpose of doing this is I want to get as much of the sheeting on and as much of the general structure in here, lock it all in before I flip it over. I want to get all the cap strips locked, and that'll kind of hold it in position, make it very easy to line up when it gets flipped over. Now with one side done, this goes kind of quick. I've just been trying to rush my way through this. I want to get all the ones on the top done. I don't know if Mr. Ken is going to be here on time or whatever. But usually if you have two people around and one person's working on one side, one on the other side, this goes so quick, it's unbelievable. It seems like when you're working on your own, it just takes forever. I just want to get a little bit, pick up any high spots that are out here. I don't want to do a final sanding. Any little high spots I can pick up. If you rub your finger over each joint, you'll be able to pick up either a high spot or a low spot. If it's low, break it and just pick it up. If it's high, and it's reasonable to sand it, just knock it down with a little soft sanding block. I'm just using a vacuum cleaner to avoid getting a lot of dust in the house. These are nice little blocks that Bob Martens made these blocks up. And we use them all the time, Bob, to tell you the truth. It also helps to keep the dust off of where you're sanding. So it's real handy that the wing is attached. When you have this in your lap, it's a lot harder to control. And it doesn't look like we're going to be doing a lot of sanding outdoors from now on, so this is one of the choices I have. Maybe the only choice pretty soon. Okay, one side all done, even a little bit of a sanding job on that. Now all I need to do, get the scraper, pop the blocks in the front. Sometimes you can just get away with just turning it over, not even moving the blocks in the back. But it doesn't matter either way. We want to get that wing out, look inside, vacuum up the table here, clean it all up, flip it right over. That's the next step. Even if the pins come off, we'll just glue them right back on, no problem. Now because there's little dots of glue on a table, you almost can't prevent that. And when I checked this wing right after the last time I checked it, after all the sanding was done, everything was right on the money. So you would think there's a good chance that right now it's still the same. That's not always true though, and if it isn't, then we need to do a little shimming or twisting or whatever, but we want to get it, for the next step, get it right back to where it's all lined up around the whole perimeter of the wing. Again, we're really trying to make some real big attempt at keeping the dust down in a house for Karen's sake. Now maybe a lot of people have a shop where the dust isn't really a problem, or you can, California, obviously you could be outdoors, but anyway, we're trying to, every possible way to keep this clean if we can. So looking at the whole wing, the back edge was so straight, it just slipped right onto the pins. I didn't have to break the back ones away. But again, it's like putting a hinge line in. You got to start at one end, work to the other. Now I want to start with the front. Now I want to look right at the front, right at the absolute point, and start working my pin blocks in. So I can get the front end, and then of course get the gauge and check the whole perimeter before I start any of the work. Now sometimes in this case you can use the same two holes for lining it up. Before you do anything else, get a little reference. And the whole thing is to tack it and check it. We want to be right on the point of that leading edge. This needs to be adjusted up just a little bit. Well, it looks like what's happened is the hole is a little elongated. There we go. And before I glue this one down, I did a little shaving and shimming here. I wanted to get this one just right. This whole thing is locked in position, and I want to start at the outer tip and lock each half rib in. You really can't get your hand under there, but it doesn't matter. The ribs fit nice and tight normally. Now, if you had a little gap in here, the choices would be to use some thick CA, or you could use some alphatic resin, paint it on with a Q-tip. Now when it comes to the middle, that's the real important trick, is to get the glue all around the spars. I even like to take and get some extra inside here. This is going to be a real, especially on a profile, it's going to be a high stress area. Getting the wood all hardened up with CA is definitely a good idea. In by the spar joint. This part right in here I want to harden up. Also down here, this is one of the areas that, because there's no real support under here, you just harden up the inside with some thin CA. If you wanted to, you could put a little web. I think this will work just fine though. Now obviously once I get all these ribs glued in, I'll go back and check that I haven't in some way put too much pressure or twist on this, because it's still relatively delicate until we get that top sheeting and center sheeting in. But the more you can do right now to lock it in every step of the way, it's making it stronger, less prone to warp. Every one of these joints will go toward locking it right in. It's not a bad idea too at this point in time. Get some on the cap strips. Now I just want a reference off of the 2 center ribs so I know exactly where the fuselage is going to go when it ultimately rests on here. And this will help me lay out the controls, the mechanism, the horn. This will be my reference point. Thing you can do to make your life a little bit easier. See, these are the pieces of wood I laid out for the leading edge. See how nice and straight the grain is? The grain is going straight, straight, straight. Now out at this end, and this is a pretty typical thing, there's a branch of a tree or something here where it's uneven. And if you run your hands over this, you'll feel this wood is harder than this piece here. And this piece, because it's A grain, it tends to conform a lot nicer. You don't get a spot in here. Whenever you have that kind of a grain going through the wood, you always get a little bit of a rough spot. So I'll cut the leading edge off of this end of it. Since we're going to only use maybe 2/3 of the wood, let's use the best part of each wood. Not only use the best wood, but use the best part of each wood. See, there's all little tricks every step of the way. And if I remember right, one of the stunt forums, Scott Smith made mention of that, especially with foam wings, how important it was to get, again here you just want to pin both edges, how important it was not only to get the best wood. A lot of people have a piece of wood that one end or one edge is a lot heavier or more twisted than the other side. Well, you really want to, at least I would, want to make every effort at using the best part of that wood. I have to remember which one of the stunt forums. Scotty did a big thing on that about weighing it in the middle and everything, and it was absolutely good information. Again, a lot of this sheeting here is redundant. I won't go back and forth over this 100 times, but pin it up. Now the only thing that's going to be different here is I'm going to lay out alphatic resin on the ribs, because it'll just be more convenient than trying to get in there with CA later on. So I will lay a bead of alphatic in there. And that's pretty much the way Harold used to build those beautiful Valkyrie wings. I just want to remove all the little wood so it's easier to get it out now than later. When we go to put the bell crank in, we don't have to deal with these 2 little pieces of wood. I want to make sure before I put the CA on this side, all the ribs have a nice coat of alphatic. I let the first coat kind of soak in for 2 minutes, and then I go over it, spread it out, make sure each rib has a good bead. Also then just paint it down, make sure I'm picking up a footprint of glue on the whole sheeting. And you can see there's a decent footprint on everything. Now just got to Now the thing that's nice about a sanding block, to roll this back, the thing that's nice about the sanding block, it has a little bit of a grip, so it tends to hold the wood. Yes. Isn't it funny? The glue never kicks off until it hits your finger. It's just unbelievable. Get used to it. Anyway, just heard this morning from Joe Adamusco and Bob Martenza, going to be trying to plan to come up for a weekend real soon. Discuss our soon-to-be Supermarine 1998, whatever it's going to be, Air Racer Spitfire. Next thing I want to do, I want to make that joint that goes in here, that little lip. Just checking I got everything, a nice glue seam on everything. Okay, I want to make that little lip that goes in here, and then obviously repeat the whole process on the outboard wing. But it really is nice when it starts to shape. This is when it really starts to become a wing. Wings here. What did Robert? Oh, you got the body sanded. Okay. Is the tail in there permanent?
No.
Okay, the tail come. Okay. You did a lot more sanding on this.
Yeah, and I fiberglassed all the way back. Like
Okay, right.
Underneath here, it's all fiberglass.
Okay, so you did get some of that done.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
And I marked the center line for the engine, and this other line would be, I think,
Right,
right
right.
about where I would put the holes in for the.
All right, let me see how
tank.
you did on a wing. Oh, you got the flaps made. What a guy. Boy, you're really moving along here. Okay.
I put the weight box in.
Okay. And you got the slider, we did that last week?
Right.
Okay. All right, you're making some real progress there. That's great.
Now, I didn't know what I was going to do. I made
I want to get the belt crank in here. That's the next thing, is the belt crank. I'll make this up. We could sheet the middle of the wing cap, strip it, and take that off the table. See, I'm trying to work on two of these guys at the same time. Nice. One's hanging up by the ceiling, one's on a table, one's on the floor. Rudy Ryback's got his pretty well under control too, so got three of them. We should have three of them flying in 2 or 3 weeks, in a month. And today is a beautiful day, isn't it? Real nice.
Easy, but
Now I want to make the brace, the doubler for here. Get that tacked in, and I'll be ready to make up the belt
I drove
crank
over
now.
at that time because I wanted